want to welcome everyone to day 2 of the Innovation Shorts. Really excited to have you all here. We have some really great presenters lined up. So in this room, we'll be hearing from Bob Varness of Tongass Rain Electric Cruise, from Aimee Hassell of Tiny Haven, from Jacqueline Summers and Rachel McCrickard, and from Wadood Ibrahim. So thanks to our presenters for being here as well. And we're going to start off with Bob. So Bob is here with us, I believe, in the audience, but he asked me to play a pre-recorded video just to make sure that the internet held up. So I will be sharing my screen so we can hear from Bob Varness first about finding your way in a nascent industry. So please let me know in the chat if there are any problems with the screen sharing or if you're not able to hear me.
Welcome to the Innovation Summit 2021. Today I'm going to be talking about finding your way in a nascent industry. My name is Bob Varness and I'm with Tongass Rain Electric Cruise. A little about Tongass Rain Electric Cruise LLC. I founded the company in 2014 to be an eco-tour company. We got into electric vessel design and we started selling electric motors. We've performed gas to electric conversions, and we provide electric propulsion education and consulting, and now we're doing custom electric vessel sales. After previously running whale watches, we decided to get back into it in 2014. And why whale watching? It was a popular local attraction in a growing market, and it was fun. There was always whales out there. Had some challenges though. The cost of fuel and the exhaust emissions were weighing on my mind. And then there was market competition. There was some pretty well-established whale watching operations by then, and we had to find our way into that market. So our solution was to charge less than our competition and to differentiate our business. And so the results turned out to be an electric whale watch vessel. So in thinking about the e-boat concept, what's not to like? Quiet operations, no exhaust smell, lower cost to operate, and we were doing our part for environmental stewardship. And I thought, what a great experience. Where can I buy one? Well, we found we couldn't really buy one anywhere. So I got together with a naval architect and we started designing one, primarily to see if it'd even be possible to do what we wanted to do. We started designing a 50-foot, 47-passenger catamaran, and it was powered with twin electric motors, and I called it the Tongass Rain. Here's another shot of some of the surfaces and the structure. So in November 10th, 2014, we went ahead and slid the design across the table and gave it to a boat builder, and they actually provided pricing to construct the vessel. And to my surprise, it was only about 10% more expensive than a twin diesel vessel. We got into some difficult areas with the Coast Guard inspection process. They didn't have adequate language at the time to address lithium-ion battery technology. And so they required some additional work from us. Quality failure analysis, design verification testing procedures, and periodic safety test procedures were in addition to some of the normal requirements. So basically our 25-ton vessel was falling into a category of practically a cruise ship, something typically much larger. These next few slides are just intended to show you the amount of work that went into the project. There was an awful lot of work that went into the project. And, in addition to the regular ask, we had additional ask, and up into including description of operation, load and motor current analysis, troubleshooting procedures and flow charts, which are all pretty standard. But bottom line, it was really a lot of work. So with escalating design costs, escalating construction costs, over 2,200 hours in research and design and meetings and communications and documentation, along with multiple Coast Guard submissions, it was time to just put the brakes on and say, hold it. We need to stop and reevaluate and wait for the battery industry to mature and let some of the larger companies in the United States get some vessels out there. So we reflected, reevaluated, and adjusted to selling electric boat motors, and that's kind of where the focus went. Selling motors is always fun. People are really excited to buy something new and use it, and so far our customers have really been loving their electric boat motors. We went on to do electric conversions from gas vessels. And here's some photos of kind of what it takes to put together an electric boat. And we did two. We did the Kachita and the Tongass Mist. So in 2019, in the fall, I got a phone call from the naval architect that I had been working with, and he asked me to work on a project with him. It was an electric boat being built in Switzerland. So in that case, we went ahead and had a naval architect in Vancouver, BC. The client was in Switzerland, and the suppliers were in Holland, Germany, New York, Florida, and Chicago. And I went ahead and did the conceptual electric design, and right here from Juneau, Alaska. So after we design a vessel, the CTC files, which are the cut files for the structure, can be sent anywhere to be cut. And so basically the boats that are designed can be built anywhere, and they can be built either with your builder or our builder. So we're gaining momentum, and looking back, I'd done the Tongass Rain project, we had done electric propulsion sales, gas to electric conversions, we've established relationships with industry professionals and suppliers, and we'd done research and design consulting. And I thought to myself, where's all this going? So there was other alignments happening too. And there weren't many commercial grade workboats out there. No performance forecast data with the boats that were being offered, and very few builders building custom electric boats. And I thought to myself, is this another opportunity? So we went ahead and put together a vessel, a 30-foot multi-mission platform. It's a catamaran. And we went ahead and equipped it with a couple of really nice electric outboard motors and put together a performance forecast. So a client could actually look at the vessel and see what it would do for speed and how long it would last and how far it would go. And, this was the first time I had ever seen anything like this in the industry, and I was pretty proud of it. So we went ahead and firmed up relations with everybody that we had been working with, and I developed a 7-page prospectus called Introduction to Electric Boats. And now we're reaching out to maritime communities and organizations across the country. And we're educating them on what alternatives may work better for their operation. So looking back to 2014, today we do electric propulsion, and we have those dealerships to sell motors, and we sell in Juneau, and we deliver to your doorstep nationwide. We also have the propulsion design consulting, and that's a global market for us. And we have e-boat sales, and that's also a global market for us. The boats are designed in Vancouver and Juneau, and they could be built anywhere on the planet. And if anybody has any questions, I'd like to take them right now.
Great. Thanks, Bob, for that awesome presentation. And I want to remind everyone that there is not time for questions during the short session, but we will have a networking session directly after this. So you'll be able to ask questions there and connect with the presenters. And you can also find their contact info on our networking wall. So I'm just going to hand it off right off to Aimee Hassell, the founder and CEO of Tiny Haven. She's going to talk to us about tiny houses in the North, a solution to a housing crisis. So go ahead, Aimee.
There we go. Good afternoon. Welcome to Tiny Haven. I want to talk to you today a little bit about tiny houses in the North, a solution to our housing crisis. Anchorage does have a critical housing market shortage, and bearing the brunt of that are our students. We used UAA and APU as our target market for this survey because they are the majority shareholders in Anchorage. And we found that 74% of our students do live in off-campus housing. So you take a look at the unit on the right. It's cute, it's tidy, it's in a great part of town. You think, I could live there, my student could live there, that's awesome. And then you'll take a look at that ad. That's a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom unit. So now you have 2 people living with you that you may not know. Did you run a background check? I don't know about you, but I didn't as a college student. Take a look a little further, and it's $37.50 per month on a 12-month lease. That is $1,250 per student, and that may or may not include utilities. The reality is our students go where the rents are cheap, and you get what you pay for. There are some pretty scary rental units in our market at that lower price break. So our solution is we proposed a series of tiny houses to help with this market gap. Some of them are mobile, some of them are stationary. The tiny house movement is now. Over half of Americans say that they would consider going tiny. Even better, millennials are at 63%. If you take a look at the picture on the right, that is an actual tiny house village that is currently operating in Austin, Texas. They're doing fantastic business plan work during COVID because the units are isolated for COVID isolation factors. They are not on a heat exchange system, and they're pretty self-contained. And I think we need some here in Anchorage. The tiny house movement is just that. It is a movement. It is not about, oh, I live in a cute little small house. No, it's all about spending more time outdoors, about downsizing, about making your priorities activities rather than non-activities. If you take a look at this chart, I have to kind of laugh because I never turn my air conditioner on, but it's a really good visual about the range of energy costs depending on your insulation factor and how much BTU you're putting out. So the chart on the bottom right is about 400 square feet. Most tiny houses are around 500, so it's pretty comparable depending on. If you slap that together with 2x4 R13 construction, you're looking at about 12,000 BTU. If you look at the chart on the left, 12,000 BTU is between yellow and blue. So that's a pretty high cost. You up that R factor to maybe R40. We are currently looking at building with Arctic panels, which have better insulation value, and you bring that back down between orange and gray. I mean, that's huge. That means you can basically plug in a space heater from Menards, or excuse me, from Home Depot, and go about your business, and your house is taken care of. Technical difficulties are my forte in life. The market potential, we are a non-traditional campus at UAA. I am also a student. I am a senior psychology major, so I'm a really good example of non-traditional. We found that 91% of our students are underserved. The dorm capacity will not hold them, and it was never meant to be. As an open campus, we have other people in our community that live in other places. APU is a more traditional conservative dorm and four-year college as well as grad school, and they're at 83% underserved. We propose to use tourist dollars to subsidize those student rents to give our students a break. Seems like tourism here in Alaska stopped somewhere in about, I don't know, 2016. Post-COVID tourism is ranking Alaska as one of the top destinations. People have been saving that money for a long time, waiting for that great vacation once COVID ends. COVID's not going to end. Post-pandemic travel accommodations are going to be different than they were before. People are going to look for different things when they go out to book a resort or an accommodation for business travel. They want to know that it is, clean, inviting, and somewhat isolated. The tiny house does have advantages for students. They are sustainable and low cost. If somebody trashes a unit during a kegger on a Friday, well, it's not quite as bad as if they trash your $300,000 house. The tiny house is about a third of the size of a regular house and a third of the cost. Being close to campus is critical for students. They need to participate in their student career. If you are working full-time or part-time in the community, that commute time could mean the difference between whether you caught an extra school activity or not. The 9-month academic lease means that our students can go out and spend time doing their practicums and their summer activities that they need to enrich themselves as students. They're not stuck in that 12-month lease and they're not poor. Anchorage is catching up. This is one of the very first developments I've seen for a tiny house in town. These are for sale, so they are actual units on the real estate market. Each unit is around 600 to 700 square feet. The smallest one, I believe, is 600. But the big deal is here, they fit 3 of these units on a 7,000 square foot lot, which is 0.16 of an acre. If you put a traditional duplex on there, you only get 2 rental units out of it. It's creating more with less. So we're actually moving towards how can we get individual units into the same amount of space as a stacked condo or apartment building. This one is actually listed as a condo, so it does have an HOA. I think we can do a little bit better. We use resources wisely. That's one of my favorite parts of Alaska. Alaskans are plucky. We hold on to stuff. There are fantastic finds in people's sheds. I propose that if we use upcycled materials and stick local, that we can save a lot of this money. Just as a quick glance, if you've ever been part of the Alaskan, shall we call it the postage disease, where you see something with free shipping and all of a sudden, like this one, $2.99 delivery. If we can take an item off of a local garage sale or Craigslist or Alaska's List, and we can upcycle that for the same purpose, you get a little bit more distinctiveness and it's a lot cheaper. I just shaved about $1,100 off that purchase. It does need some modifications. Partnering with local other retailers, Matsu Valley Rebuilder is a local nonprofit. They accept donations of, hey, say you had that sheetrock sheet in your garage for 2 years. You don't know what to do with it. Give it to Matsu. They'll find somebody who can really use it and give them a price break. This is nothing new. Tiny houses have been around forever. Alaskans are really used to being able to build and create with what we have available. The picture in the bottom left is actually Juneau, sometime in the early 1900s. Just to give you an idea of what we're looking at, there are so many different styles and creative flair that go into these. They're almost art projects. You can serve many different sorts of needs, whether it's single family living on one level for someone with wheelchair access, to shoving kids in a tiny little loft that you're not willing to go into. There are also other applications for these models. A lot of cities are using them for homelessness. The model on the left bottom is actually just a little housing village in Washington, D.C., because they wanted to prove they could. There's a lot of different reasons for it. And there are people out there that are actively looking that do not want to live in an RV park or a mobile home park. And I will say there is a stigma out there. Mobile homes and RVs are not as cool as tiny houses. If you tell somebody, yeah, I live in a trailer, they're going to give you that look. Oh, where? If you say, hey, I live in a tiny house, it's a totally different reaction. It's a movement, it's a way of life, and it's here to stay. And I think that this is a really great way. For example, earthquake damage. Earthquake damage on some of the houses was significant. One of these units, you just pull it out and pull a new mobile unit in, you're good to go. Wouldn't it be awesome if you could graduate with a 4-year degree, having paid housing costs for 4 years, and take your house with you when you go? Because there's a network of pad sites that you could just park in or go buy a piece of land. Thanks so much for listening to my presentation today.
Great, thank you so much, Aimee. That was wonderful. And we are gonna move on to Jacqueline and Rachel. Jacqueline Summers is the Managing Director of Health Tie, and Rachel McCrickard is the CEO of Motivo. And they are going to be presenting about Motivo Moves Mountains, innovation in licensing Alaska-based therapists and counselors. So take it away. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you everyone for having both me and Rachel here today. I'm really excited to present with Rachel because we've been able to work together to make a big difference in licensing in Alaska, and it really goes back to some of the themes that are here today for the Juneau Innovation Summit. So one of the key themes is trying to build things more locally. And through Motivo, we've been able to do that. I met Rachel when she presented for Health Tie in 2019. Health Tie is a healthcare innovation hub. And what we do is we connect healthcare innovators like Rachel and Motivo to Alaskan organizations who could possibly use their products and services to lower healthcare costs and improve access for Alaskans. And so after Rachel presented in December, I reached out to a number of different organizations, including Sarah Chambers, who is the division director with the state of Alaska Corporations for Business Licensing and Professional Licensing. And this is the great thing about Alaska is that Sarah took my email and she immediately saw the value and she provided an opportunity for Rachel and I to meet with her. So a huge shout out to Sarah today, because really in Alaska, one of the things that we have that we should value is our closely networked community. So with that, I'd like to hand this off to my partner, Rachel, to tell you what happens next. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Thrilled to be here today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So like Jacqueline said, my name is Rachel McCrickard. I'm the CEO and founder of Motivo, and I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist. So Motivo solves a problem that I experienced on my own road to licensure as a therapist, which is lack of access to a clinical supervisor. I want to start off with this statistic from SAMHSA that says that more than 75% of all U.S. counties are what are known as mental health professional shortage areas, and about half of U.S. counties have no mental health professionals at all. This is very true also in Alaska, where there are a lot of rural areas and there are not enough providers to meet the need. This is a picture of me at my graduation. I went to school in California, and when I graduated, there were two things that I didn't know that day. One, no one told me my graduation cap was on backwards. I wore it like that the entire day. I thought it was supposed to look like that. And then two, I didn't know that it was going to take me actually 3 more years and $8,000 in order to get a license as a therapist. So something that a lot of people don't realize about becoming a therapist is that getting your degree is actually the easy part. It's becoming licensed that is so hard. And the reason it's so hard is because therapists have to go through this 2-year licensure process where they collect clinical supervision hours. You can think of it as very similar to residency for a doctor. You collect these clinical supervision hours face to face with another licensed professional who's called your clinical supervisor. But the problem is that because of the shortage of mental health providers, there often aren't enough or the right type of clinical supervisors in rural areas, and this slows down the licensure process. So a lot of people wonder, why is there such a shortage of mental health professionals in rural areas? And lack of access to clinical supervision is a key reason for this. I'm from a rural area of Georgia, right under Chattanooga, Tennessee. So when I moved home from California, I was driving 2 hours for 3 years in order to get to the closest clinical supervisor every week so that I could collect my hours in person. So the idea for Motivo came about in 2017 when Georgia passed this very clear rule saying that you could do all of your supervision hours through secure video conference, like telehealth. So I started looking into other states and realized that 45 states at that time had also begun to allow supervision to occur online. And I started thinking, oh my goodness, that would have made it so much easier for me when I was driving to Atlanta in order to collect my clinical supervision hours. So I had the idea for Motivo, which is really just a marketplace of about 1,000 clinical supervisors licensed in all 50 states. We have several in Alaska who are available for virtual clinical supervision. So these are therapists who are in Alaska working towards Alaska licensure, but perhaps their clinical supervisor isn't close by. So we connect the two together through a HIPAA compliant platform, and they do their supervision all online, and they're able to stay in the rural community and provide services there. So these are just a few of the ways that we've begun to get connected in Alaska, and really Jacqueline Summers deserves all of the credit, like every bit of it, I have to say, because there's a lot of people who are often interested in what startups do, and they want you to come and participate in something, or they want to connect you to the right person, which is wonderful. And I'll take as many introductions as I can get. But Jacqueline is someone who has stayed with us for over 2 years now, continuing to look for opportunities to get us plugged in to the Alaska mental health ecosystem. So yes, making the introduction to Sarah Chambers, but also many other introductions to behavioral health organizations and other stakeholders in the mental health field in Alaska to make sure that we got connected. So really there is such a strong benefit to Health Tie in the way that they can pull resources from anywhere in the country and help take that information and apply it to problems that still need to be solved in an individual state. And that's just what Jacqueline has been doing at Health Tie. And she didn't pay me to say that, but you could send me a Starbucks, Jacqueline, if you want. So these are the 3 ways that we're working with Alaska right now. So workforce pipeline, as new people graduate and as they need to get into the field, supervision helps with that. So we help funnel them into a new job so that they can get these supervision hours and get licensed. We also provide a community of learning. So oftentimes therapists work in professional silos. They don't have enough professional peers. They can burn out very easily. So we have a large peer group network. We offer free peer groups on lots of different topics that are interesting to therapists. Particularly right now, we're working a lot on racial trauma and BIPOC, multicultural counseling, a lot of those issues, COVID response. Those are things that are very difficult for clinicians. And so we're providing support to one another. So by therapists and for therapists. And then getting connected to the behavioral health organizations serving Alaska's Medicaid population or uninsured population is another key piece of it as well. So again, thrilled to be here today. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you, Jacqueline, for all you've done to support the work of Motivo. And that's all for me.
Great. Thank you so much, Rachel and Jacqueline, for talking about Motivo. That was really insightful. And with that, we're going to move on to our last presenter for this session, Wadood Ibrahim, who is a co-founder of Protegra, and he is going to give us a perspective on employee-owned companies. So go ahead and take it away, Wadood.
Hi, Alex. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. I'm just trying to share my screen. Please let me know if is my screen?
Yes, we're seeing it.
Great. Is it full screen or?
No, we're seeing it in the editing mode, but yeah, if you go to slideshow and then present, it should go full screen for us. Yes, that's perfect.
Perfect. Great. Well, Alex, thank you very much. I'd like to thank JEDC for this conference. It's my first time actually at this conference. I'm very impressed already. And thank you for inviting me. I'm going to today talk really about what's an employee-owned company mean and more of a perspective. When I say a perspective, I mean my and my colleagues' perspective on our experience of establishing a company called Protegra, which is a software company. We've been in business for over 22 years. We're based in Winnipeg in Canada. We're behind the local frequency app that is being launched in Juneau. Michael Schuman talked about Local Futures. That's another website for local investment. I'm going to just focus really on structuring a company in a way where employees can be owners. It's a solution as opposed to the focus. So what's really need to think about if you're really considering employee ownership, it goes back to what's the purpose, and so that's really what should drive the decision. In a company, Simon Sinek will say, start with why. What is the purpose of the organization? There's no right or wrong purpose, but clarifying the purpose, why the company exists, what is the ultimate goal for it is, if that's not clear, it's very hard to design an ownership structure. The purpose is only one thing. The other part is what are the values underlying the culture of that organization you're trying to create and build. And so the ownership structure really needs to align with the purpose and the values, right? So that's really what should drive that. So what I'm going to talk about already our journey over the last 22 years in terms of how we designed this structure, and some of the surprises, if you wish, some of the lessons learned through this process. So what did we want to do? We wanted to have a place where people can pursue their interest. People go to work, not just a job, but it's actually a lifetime. Think about it. We spend minimum of 8 hours a day living and working at a place. That's a significant part of our lives. We sleep the other 1/3. So it's a significant part of our lives. So what we want to do is we want to create a place where people can pursue their interest, their passion, and in our context is really more about solving problems with innovative software. That's just our business. If your business is different, obviously you're going to have something different that you're going to pursue. But that's really the idea is to create a place where people can go pursue their passion. Now, being an employee, getting paid a salary, but the business has more value than just paying salaries. The actual business grows over time and delivers more value to its shareholders. So as an employee, we wanted to provide them with an opportunity to participate in that growth because they're working there. They're spending a lot of their lifetime there. They dedicated themselves to the organization. So we thought it's only fair that they can participate in that growth. And ownership was a very good way of doing that. The other aspect that we wanted to really focus on is when you create an organization, you got to focus on its values and its purpose. And it's an employee-owned organization. You got to be careful in terms of how it's set up, where you can ensure that the founding purpose and values continue to be stewarded throughout the lifetime of the organization. So that's really this is actually quite an important point here, because if you have employees who don't believe in that, they can direct the company in a different way. So how do you ensure that? That's actually a very tricky one. At the same time, you want to provide a voice for the shareholders. So what happens is a lot of organizations, when they start an employee-owned company, people think, well, hey, I'm an owner, so I can stick my nose in everything because I'm an owner now. So we wanted to make sure people understand the separation between shareholders and employees, but at the same time, you want to provide a voice for shareholders. So that structure has to provide some way of employees having a voice. So really, at the end of the day, you want to separate the running of the business from the ownership of the business, and this way you do that through a proper governance structure. So our journey, we started in 1998, 22 years ago, and when the business was good, everybody was okay. And then when the business got tough, things get tested, and so we wanted to make sure there was a control over the organization's destiny. So we had to basically change the structure of the organization in terms of the ownership. We had only one class of shares. We changed to multiple classes of shares in order to make sure we have a balance in terms of how we move forward. So it's not just about share price. It's about the organization's purpose and about the organization values. Not everyone really wants to be an owner. That's another thing we kind of discovered. A lot of employees say, I don't want to be an owner. The ownership right now is open to anybody and everybody, but not everyone want to be an owner because innovation has risks and some people don't want to take that risk. It was kind of interesting. I thought in the beginning, everybody wants to be an owner, but actually not everybody wants to, which is kind of surprised actually. Somebody told me, says, when I buy shares, I start worrying about it, about the company more because now I own something. So it's kind of a very interesting revelation. So something to be aware of. Initially, we thought employee owners is very important. You have like act like an owner, think like an owner. That will be the foundation of the culture. Culture obviously is very necessary, but it's not sufficient. You still need to have good strategy, great execution to be a successful business. So that's why the separation is really important, is to say you have an opportunity to be a shareholder, but also that's different than actually running the company. So that's the interesting part. We have some people who are not in management, but they own significant part of the organization. So it's an interesting balance, and we managed to make that work, but it didn't happen overnight. So what's the structure look like? Basically, we moved from one class of shares to three classes of shares. We have founding shares. Basically, these are voting. And we have two other classes of shares. People who own small number of shares, who buy shares every year, but they don't have a lot of shares. And some people who like to buy a lot of shares. And so the ones who have more shares, they are in a different class. And what happens, every class, so you see two classes, the small and the large, are non-voting. So you say, well, I have no voice. But the way they have a voice, actually, each class elects a board member. So the board of directors is fully voting. And so they have a vote at the board table. And the board table represents the governance of the organization, not the management of it, but the governance. So this way, shareholders actually have a real say at the board table, have full transparency of the organization, full decision-making on, if there's a distribution of dividend or acquisition or whatever, any financial or major decisions, the board has to agree to. And so this way, they have actually a full say in terms of how things go through their board members, and they can elect that board members once a year. So that board member has to be answer. He or she need to answer to the class members who owns those shares. So really, at the end of the day, you want to align your purpose and values. It's not for everyone, I would say. I'm a firm believer in employee share ownership. I think it's built a great organization, great culture. It's really good if you're trying to build a long-term, built-to-last business for the most part. And I'm happy to discuss with you any questions about that. You have my email address. I'm a big proponent of that. And in terms of connection to local, when you actually have an employee-owned company, you can actually focus on projects that has purpose. And so we like to call ourselves a purpose-driven organization. Anybody in the company can pick up cause and actually do something about that cause, and we will support that because we don't have outside investors. So nobody's pushing the company to do things just for a return. We do it because it's the right thing to do to create a great place to work and do something of value. Thank you very much for having me, and I hope you find this useful.
Great. Thank you so much, Wadood, for your presentation. Wadood will also be speaking tomorrow on an ownership panel, so you can catch him again and hear a little bit more about his knowledge and thoughts on ownership. So thank you to all of our presenters, and thank you to the audience for sitting in and watching these incredible shorts.